My wife and I, when we were first married, one of the things we did together was we got those big posters that you can color, and we colored together. Well, just recently we started that up again, just because and I was surprised at how hard it is for me to do that. There's muscle memory there. I guess that's the biggest challenge, is that your mind tells you that you should be able to easily do this, and you just can't do it. But I just continue to try. So. Is that it? I don't want to cut anybody off. Yeah.
Would you say your depth perception is affected at all? Or is it mainly just your ability to move around?
I think it's just my ability. I don't think it's. There is my neurologist, and I can't remember what she called it, but there is a little bit of spatial problem with, but I haven't really noticed anything. She does. Maybe you should ask her. But, no, if I'm reaching for something, I can judge by how far away that is. I might miss it because of other issues, but I know where it's at. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Because my grandpa has Parkinson's, and he has like a really hard time. Like if he's in a doorway, he'll stop and like just stay there for like 30 seconds or more, trying to go, because he thinks that it's like tiny.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Yes.
What does your bracelet say?
My bracelet says, I'm gonna have to put my second pair of eyes on to tell you. So give me a second. My bracelet says my name, my condition, SCA ataxia, and the next 3 lines are my medical allergies. So this would be in case first responder. And I'll tell you a little story. One of the things about my disease is you have neuropathy. Does anybody know what neuropathy is? No, it's got to do with the fact that your nerves are misfiring, and they're sending wrong messages. So, for example, my feet always feel like they're wet. A lot of times it feels like I have battery acid in my mouth. My jaw hurts. Occasionally my hips hurt, but there's nothing there. So like, for example, when my mouth tastes so bad, you know how you're kind of conscientious when you got, you're, I need to brush my teeth. Well, I'd kiss my wife or whatever, and she'd be like, no, there's absolutely nothing wrong. But I could taste it. So 2.5, 3 years ago, my neurologist put me on a medication for neuropathy for a pain I was having in my jaw. Well, one of the rare side effects I found out later of the medication is that it'll attack your, was it kidneys?
Liver.
Liver? I get those two confused. It attacks your liver. And I wound up, after a week and a half of taking this basic dose, poisoning my body. I wound up with, I was like 105 temperature in a ZER room, and it was starting to shut my liver down, and they were afraid that full function of the liver might not ever come back, because they didn't know if I had permanently damaged it or not. Well, thankfully it did, but that was a medication that the doctor who prescribed it said, this is a kind of a narcotic, and it rewires your brain. So when you stop taking this medication, you need to tell me, because we need to make a plan so that you take it in increments, in steps. You can't just quit cold turkey. You got to, 1 pill and then half a pill and that sort of thing. Well, the ear doctor came into the room and he said, you need to stop taking this right now. And I said, I can't quit cold turkey. I was told not to. He said, well, you either risk what it's gonna do to you, or you lose your levers. And I'm telling you, you gotta quit right now. So I did, and luckily there was no, at least I don't think there was any. Maybe I'd be a different person had I not quit. I forgot what the question was. Did that answer the question for who asked that question?
I asked what was on your bracelet. So.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, and that got me going down a rabbit trail. So that answered that question? No.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you have a question in the back at some point?
I do. So I see a little, it looks like a Chihuahua dog on your weblog. So is that your pet, and is it like a therapy or a servicing?
Yeah, it is a pet. And we have two of them. And what happened was, they are my daughter's dogs, and we kind of inherited them because they're both away at college now. So the one male dog prefers, well, I wouldn't say prefers, but he likes me, and the female dog is definitely her dog, and they're both little Chihuahua mixed dogs. They're a kind of therapy as far as stress relief, but and I've wrestled with the issue of wanting a balanced dog because I get very attached. And so I'm not sure how I feel about that. Ideally, what I'd like is a balanced tiger. I'd love to have that. I don't think that's realistic. So. That answer that question?
Question for you.
Yeah.
Well, I forget who it was. I think maybe Elizabeth asking about whether you were able to find jobs that that physically would accommodate you, because
Right.
clearly you are you're contributing to the community in many different ways, right? You're leading to support groups, and you're communicating about ataxia through your blog and things like that. You are able to work, and currently you're contributing, but not getting paid for it.
Right, right.
I just wanted to kind of highlight that and have us all kind of ponder, how inaccessible our society is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you are, you're a really bright man, you're a good writer,
Thank you.
and there's not enough for you to work.
Well, one of the big frustrations is the Social Security system is a system that gets abused like every other system. There's people that take advantage. And so, in my mind, there's this, and this is part of your question, there's a stigma with telling people you're on Social Security, right? Because almost invariably, that's going to tell somebody that you sit at home and watch TV and eat bonbons all day long, right? That's certainly not the case in my case. And there are people that circumvent the system and do take advantage and do get away with stuff like that. But I'm willing to work if I could. I didn't ask for my disease, so.
What we've been talking about a lot is, inaccessibility of physical environments and social environments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
When there's some activities you can't do that your mind thinks you can do and you get frustrated,
Uh-huh.
is there certain tactics you use to calm yourself down, or do you just have to push through it?
I just have to stop and be creative about it. Think of another way to do it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll take me 5 or 6 tries in a number of minutes to tie my shoes. But that doesn't mean that I'm gonna give up. My hands will get into a pattern where I just keep trying the same thing. I just have to stop, refocus, and then try it again. So does that answer that
It did,
question? Okay,
yeah.
good. Yes.
We've talked a lot about people's perception. Clearly, you're a very intelligent person, and your writing, I really enjoyed your blog. But do you ever feel that people underestimate your mental abilities because of a physical limitation?
There may be some of that, but I don't think I've ever really come up against that. I think it almost goes to the other extreme. Because my ability is not, or my disability is not always identifiable. And so people assume that I can do more than I really can. There's more expectation to do more than, you know, if there was a lady that walked in here and dropped an armful of stuff, and I knew I couldn't really help her making that a bigger mess, and I didn't, somebody might assume that, oh, he just doesn't care, you know, he's not a gentleman. I want to go help her, it's just I can't help her. Does that answer that question? Yes?
Has your like perspective on life or any of your like philosophies or religious beliefs or anything like that like changed after your onset of your SCA?
Well, it has certainly deepened my understanding of who I am and who I am not. And that goes hand in hand with what I said about not letting the disability change who I am inside. That has certainly deepened my understanding of that. I don't know if that completely answers your question or not, but there is as I move through this, with each step I take or each fall I make, however you want to say it, I am learning, I am deepening my understanding of what this means, what this is all about, and how I approach it and what I think about it. Does that answer that question? Okay. Yeah.
How often do you have to go to like the neurologist and like how much like do you spend a ton on medication and stuff for this, or is there assistance for you? Or
Well, one thing is I don't take any medication right now. I know that a lot of people take medication to help them sleep better, help them with spasticity, all sorts of things. But I don't take anything because I've developed kind of a hypersensitivity towards drugs. So I don't, you know, I'm on natural. And I see my neurologist once a year, and that's only for that's only for just touching base. How are you doing? You know, because there isn't a lot they can do about it. So if I have any kind of concerns, if anything new pops up within the year, I can certainly make my own appointment. But other than that, she's just there. I spend, you know, maybe 15 minutes just talking about how things are going. She rechecks my muscle memory, that kind of thing, and that's all they can do. So, and I'm okay with that. So, yeah.
Have you had physical therapy or occupational therapy to support your, you know, being active?
This is a sore point. About, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, I was, I can't think of the word. My neurologist sent me to therapy, physical therapy, and I met with a physical therapist on an ongoing basis for several months, and he showed me a couple exercises I could do at home, and I was faithful to do those for a while. But then after a while, I just I didn't think they were helping, so I gave up. And I have to say too that at that point I was a lot more active than I am now. I was on my feet 8 hours a day, and so I just didn't see a huge point to it. But yes. You need some water?
I'm curious where you live and if you lived there for a long time. If you have a smaller community where, you know, that you have SCA is known in your community. Just because if with slurred speech, if the assumption is that alcohol is involved, I'm just curious, when you go out in public, like to the grocery store, you know, people know you, or if you're facing that kind of assumption on a daily basis, like in a bigger city.
I live in Woodburn. I don't know if you're familiar with Woodburn. It's not like a large city, but it's a pretty good sized town. There are certainly people who know me and have seen me walking around the neighborhood, and I always take my cane with me so they're starting to become educated, but I certainly run into that all the time, that people just don't, you know, I get weird looks all the time, and I just don't let it bother me. When I go to the grocery store, I drive myself, and I'll park clear out. I don't have a handicap sticker, nor do I want one, because I feel like it'd be a crutch or a excuse. So I park clear out in the parking lot as far away as and then walk into the store, because that's therapy for me, right? But when I do that, I might misstep, whatever, and I get looks from people in the parking lot, and I'm okay with that. Call the cops if you want to. You
Have
know?
you ever gotten the cops called on you?
I have not, but I have several people. One guy in my Pearl and Sabor group that happens to him on a regular basis. And I have heard of other stories. You know, lady's son drove himself to a store, went inside the store, did whatever, came out, and before he could even back out of the spot, there's 3 cruisers blocking him in, and they basically were hassling him because somebody had called in and said he was intoxicated. And that happens all the time. And I'm not sure so much that, you know, I used to carry a note from my doctor, and I wear this bracelet, and so I'm hoping that'll help me explain myself to the police officer. But I think a lot of times their attitude is, you know, anybody could have wrote that note. Why should I believe you? You know, so it is what it is, and if I get reported as being drunk, then I'll deal with it. Yes.
When people find out that you have SCA, do they think that you're inspirational, and how does that make you feel?
Well, I tell them I'm inspirational. If they don't already know, I tell them. No, I don't. It's a humbling thing for me, and I certainly didn't plan on to be that way. And I guess that goes back to when I was diagnosed, that I could not see the future, and I had no idea that I would be here at some point talking to all of you. I just took one day at a time, and this is where I ended up. With the blog that I write, I wrote 2 real short 2-part blog and put them on Facebook, and I got really good response. And so I kept going because people kept encouraging me. And now this is where I am. But I say, for the most part, people don't even know what that is. You know? I mean, who of you in here knew what I was talking about when I first started? Now you know, because I educated you, right? But by and large, you know, probably 85–90% of the population out there that I come in contact with that have no clue. Did that answer your question? Okay. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so you mentioned that you want to work, but there's, you know, you're not able to. So what could employers do to make it so that you can work? I'm sure there's other people out there that are doing the same thing as you.
Right.
So is there, like, can they make the workplace more accessible, or could they modify positions, or what would help you be able to go back to work?
I would have to, take that on a job-by-job basis, but, yeah, certainly they could, maybe put speech-activated software on their computers, you know? Maybe they could put it, if my job is gonna be to talk to people on the phone all day, maybe they could put in, some kind of a speaker system or something that would make it easier for me to do that, because I can't hang onto a phone for a long period of time. So, one, they would have to be willing to make those, to make those changes. They would have to acknowledge my disability and say, we want you to work here, and so we are going to do this. And two, I just have to take that on a job-to-job basis. I'm not sure what that would look like. But it does make it extremely difficult to find a job. So, did that answer that question? Okay, thank you. Yes?
Well, and those strike me as pretty minimal accommodations that would need to be made, right?
Right.
And of course, as we're talking about, there's a lack of awareness about what SCA is and more broadly about what people with disabilities need. But it's, this is an important thing for you to be communicating to these students, because these guys are gonna go out and, be managers, work with people, become therapists and do things like that. And so just raising awareness that, we need to think more broadly about job descriptions and about accessibility. Really
Right.
important stuff.
Right.
I actually had a different question for
Okay,
you.
okay.
So you and I were talking in the beginning about kind of the differences in our experiences, because I was born with my disability and you acquired yours. And I think it's worth kind of talking about, because my sense of identity is inextricable from my disability. So I include my disability in who I am. And I
Okay.
think part of that is because I was born with it,
Okay.
and I don't know who I would be without it, right?
Right.
And so this is kind of a rare way to think, but there are other people with disabilities who feel that way. So it's actually something that I study, disability identity. So whether or not people include their disability into their identity. And it was really interesting to listen to you describe how you conceive of your identity. And so I actually wrote it down. You said, you see it as a separate part of yourself. You see it as a separate part of yourself that's always along for the ride, right?
Right.
So it's there, but it's not part of your identity.
Right.
So I wanted to comment on that. I think that's interesting. For me, and this took a long time of struggling and feeling shameful of my disability and embarrassed of it and hating it. But now I'm in a place where I feel like my disability is something that I'm proud of. I don't
Right.
find it to be a negative thing. And so that's why holding it in my identity feels like a positive thing for me. And there are a few other people with disabilities, often people who are in the activism movement and disability civil rights movement, who feel that way as well. I just wanted to kind of put that out there and wonder how you felt about that. And
Well, I can certainly understand where you're coming from, and had I been born with this, and there's no, there's no thing that I wasn't, but had I hit the ground running with this disability, I might think differently. I think because it came knocking on my door in 2003, I tend to think of it as just an unwanted guest that I have to drag with me everywhere I go. But I can certainly see your point, and that is an interesting thing. I have several people in my support group, there's a form of ataxia called Friedrichsberg ataxia. And in fact, they test me for that because there's some family history of that. It's a genetic form and it has to do with your heart. So it's your cerebellum, but your heart is also degenerating. I do not have that, but it's usually an early onset. So it'll hit people either early teens or, adolescent age. And so I have a guy that's 56 about in my support group that's been in a wheelchair since he was 14, I think, just because that's, so I certainly do think I would look at it differently a little bit if it was something that had been around longer. Yes.
You mentioned that, just now you mentioned that it's, how it's genetic and that there was some family history of a different form of ataxia.
Right.
So since you mentioned that you have college age children, is there any concern that at some point in their lives they may develop a form of ataxia?
There is. In fact, my younger daughter has commented a couple times about that because she doesn't have a real good sense of balance, just like I didn't when I was that age. So certainly that could be a factor, and I hope that I'm an example to them that if it happens, that they'll deal with it. So, good question. Yes?
Is there any way to screen for something like?
You mean beforehand?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of. That, they probably, I don't think there's any test right now, and there's such a wide range of genes that could have to do with this DNA that it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack, and they don't know it until it's there. And then they say, oh, that was what caused that. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that happened in my childhood that make sense now, that didn't then. Because I never had real good balance. So it could have very well started when I was younger and just exploded when I was 38. I don't know.
Any more questions?
If not, I thank you all for.
Bled you dry from questions.
What's that?
I think we bled you dry with questions.
It's all right. I thank you all for letting me be here. Yeah.
I just had one question. Like, I'm thinking about going to occupational therapy. Is there anything that your therapist could have done to kind of entice you more into sticking with it?
Oh, good question. Certainly giving me money. A gift of some kind, remember to get. No, offhand, I can't think of. Maybe just been a little more encouraging on the way. Like at each time I came back, he could say, I see that you've been working on this, because it shows. There's, but I didn't get encouragement, so maybe that would help. Yes.
Is talking like this, like coming here and talking to us, like gonna be taxing on you?
We'll find out when I go to stand up and leave, huh? No, it really isn't. It really isn't. Because the mental capacity is just fine. Taxi doesn't touch that, and so not really, no.
I think we should definitely commend you for coming out and
Thank
speaking
you.
with
Thank you.
honesty and candor.